Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back. It is Hump Day, September 11th, and we're going to have a great day today, guys. So we're going to dive into it here in a moment. We're good.
Yeah, I feel that excitement. Way to go.
Does Tom feel the freaking excitement, baby? What's up, buddy? Good morning, everybody. Welcome back, and happy Hump Day. I'm excited to be here. I cannot wait to see what we got going on for today, because we got CPI data that just dropped this morning, guys. And so we got some data, we got some movement, and I think we have some killer opportunity for today in the market. So, as always, hit me with a big old good morning inside of chats. If you're in the Zoom and you want to, open the mic, shout a big old good morning as well, and then we'll officially dive into it. Good morning, Julie. We'll obviously do what we always do, guys. Talk about what we got going on, break things down, build those plans, get ready to rock and roll for the day, and we'll have some fun while we do it. What's going on? Alex, Zach, Patrick, Chelsea, Christy, Cole, Catherine, Andy, Corey, Steve, Felicia, Craigster, Corey, Tom, and everybody else. What's up, everybody? Good morning. And then on the YouTube, who's over on YouTube right now for the rundown? Probably nobody. Nobody even knows that we go live on YouTube as well in the morning, and we stream the rundown show. So now you know. If you didn't know, now you know. All right, so let's dive into it officially, guys. Let's not waste any time. Let's talk about what we got going on for the day. As everybody knew coming into today, we did have CPI data, core inflation data at 8:30. So we're through all of that. Data was in line with the forecast. The only thing that we saw tick up was core inflation month over month. We came in about 0.1% higher than the forecast, and we saw that initial drawdown. We saw that initial drop with the spine to Qs, but everything else was in line, and we even saw inflation rate year over year come down 0.1%. So we had that quick little pullback on the spine to Qs, and now we're starting to see that push on up. Really nice data in line with the forecast. Nothing too crazy. What do we have coming on up today? 10:30 EIA crude oil stocks change. As we know, that's not a market moving piece of data. I'm not too mindful about that. Tomorrow we got PPI at 8:30. So for you swing traders, make sure that you're just mindful of the key data that we have tomorrow at 8:30 as well, right? That's going to be PPI data, producer price index, right? So let's go right to the Qs. Let's talk about what we got going on for today. And build a couple plans. And I tell you what, it's actually going to be a very freaking easy day, in my opinion, with the Qs. There's only like two main levels I'm watching, and there's some light areas in between these two main levels, but honestly, it's just these two key significant levels that really draw my attention to them today, and I really want to be looking to see if we get some trades off those two key levels. I think we could see some really good movement today. So first area of key support, because I know we're above it this morning in pre-market, but the first key zone that I have that I want to watch today is right here between 457.78 to 458.42. Okay, first key level. Next key level to the upside will be up here between 464.52 to 465.35. And then lower support here today is all the way down between 452.12 to 452.98. Those are the three most significant zones that stand out to me today. And what else do you notice about the top zone up there between 464.52 to 465.35? It's also up against that 20 EMA. So that's going to be a very key level of resistance, in my opinion, today, because you got the 20 EMA sitting at that zone as well, right? And so that mid zone, I'm going to label that my line in the sand. In my opinion, that's the make or break. If we're above it, I think we push higher. If we're below it, I think we drop lower. So that's going to be my line in the sand for today. My make or break is that zone between 457.78 to 458.42 on the Qs. All right. Now, in between this line in the sand and that top zone, are there other levels? Yes. Okay. Between that line in the sand and down here at that key zone, are there going to be other light levels? Yes, there will be, right? Not key significant levels, but there's going to be some other areas of light support resistance that, you know, we can be mindful of as far as taking some profits at these levels. Okay. And so, for example, the first area could be like right here on the Qs, right? I mean, that stands out to me. Candle close, right? We hit that level again, and then we dumped hard on Friday. That's an area that really stands out to me. That's going to be a light area of overhead resistance. But I'm not really looking to use that zone, for example, as a zone that I want to be getting in off of. For example, I want to really be looking at those key significant zones for the best of the best, most dialed in entries today. But again, there are going to be other like little areas in between those main zones, and those would be like pit stops, profit targets if we get into a nice trade off one of our key significant zones, right? And so that's going to be my first game plan. So I'm going to remove that one zone, right? And that's going to be my first plan, is getting long off that line in the sand if we hold above it, right? So Qs, We were kind of grinding it here this morning. CPI drops. We flushed. Okay, then we bounced right back above that zone. So if we can see the Qs open above that line in the sand and we can pull back into it and hold it as proper support, I'm going to be looking to get long. Where to? Well, my main target will be that daily zone of resistance up between 460, 452 to 465.35. That's going to be my main target, the most realistic area that I think the Q could absolutely get to today. But there will be areas in between, right, where we need to lock in some profits and look to scale out. So number one could be that zone right here. We clearly see touch point, touch point, touch point, big rejection, right? So that would be like the first area to the upside of resistance, and that's going to be like a light level of resistance, right? So that would be an area where we would consider locking in some profits if we get there. And we would just do the same thing to the downside, right? Because game plan number two is going to be if the Qs fall back below that line in the sand just to retest it as resistance, right? If we see that take place, I absolutely would want to get short on the Qs. Where to? The next key significant daily zone of support, which is down between 452.12 to 452.98. But there again will be pit stops along the way down. For example, we can go back and look at Monday's high a day, and then where we had all of that support yesterday between like 455 and 455.45. We can clearly see that that will be an area of support to the downside, right? It would be PT number one. But your main final target would be that daily lower zone. Okay, so just be mindful of that, guys. I'm not putting up any zones in between the three zones that I have because I just want to really focus on those three primary, key significant daily areas of support resistance and go from there, right? We hold that line in the sand as support. I know I want to take it all the way up to that top zone, but obviously scale out strategically off those other light areas of resistance along the way up. And then again, same thing applies to the downside. If we crack that zone, retest it as resistance, I know my main target's way down here up against that lower zone, but I will need to strategically scale out and take some profits off those lighter levels along the way down. But just want to keep the chart nice and clean, keep it nice and simple. And we got two really dialed in plans for today. Just want to see the Qs open on up. Ideally come back down to that key line in the sand zone, set up for us, and we simply just go from there. But that's where I'm looking. Again, that key level is between 457.78 to 458.42. That's the make or break. And I just want to see something set up off that zone on the Qs. All right. Let's break down the SPY. It's 9/11. We got plenty of time. So let's go ahead and break down the SPY. So first area of resistance is going to be up here between 549.46 to 549.60. Okay, that's going to be some upcoming resistance. If we break through that little level of resistance, guys, right, there is going to be a boatload of resistance along the way up, right? 20 EMA is going to be resistance. That high a day, we can just see that from this daily zone of resistance to this daily zone of resistance, there will be a lot of little areas along the upside, right? There's definitely going to be some resistance on up. It's not like we just have a clear shot straight up. So just got to be mindful of that, right? Because you do have the 20 EMA sitting overhead. You got those prior highs of day all the way up into that top zone, but the next zone of resistance overhead would be up there between that 554.65 to 555.25. So that's going to be our main area of resistance, right? Upcoming resistance is that zone that we're coming into now here in pre-market. That's between 549.46 to 549.60. Lower support for today on the SPY is going to be this zone right here between 547.14 to 547.53. And then your absolute lowest zone of support is all the way down here between 542.76 to 543.42. All right. And I'm going to go ahead and make this zone right here my line in the sand. So that zone right here between 549.46 to 549.60, I'm going to go ahead and label that as my lits, my line in the sand for today, right? And so it was that gap up open, low, we bounced, low, we bounced, we closed at that level. And then here on Friday, we have some decent movement around that zone intraday on Friday. So that's like the next main level of resistance that I really see coming on up. And so if we break above that today and we hold it, I believe that we can see a nice push up into the 555s. That zone we've been discussing for the past week and a half. And that's going to be the next area of key resistance to the upside. So if we get above that lits, we hold above it, I do believe we get all the way back into the 555s. But there will be pit stops along the way up, right? So the 20 EMA will be an area of resistance, right? Last Friday's high a day, an area of resistance, last Thursday's high a day, so on and so forth, all the way up into that 555 level if we get there in the first place, right? And then again, if we fail to break that line in the sand resistance, which is also pretty close to the 50 SMA, right? And we can't break through it, I think we can see some downside. And again, the next most significant level of support to the downside is down here between that 547.14 to 547.53. Okay, so SPY. Let's go ahead and build those two plans. It really just comes down to that line in the sand level for me today. Okay, so first things first, I want to see the SPY get to that line in the sand and see what happens. Do we break it, retest it, and set up long? If so, I know I want to be getting long up to that top zone of resistance. But I also know that I need to zoom out, look left, and be willing to take profit at these prior levels of resistance until we get to that key significant zone of resistance. Because there will be areas where we should strategically scale out of that long trade if the long trade presents itself. Okay, so just be mindful of that. But we would have realistic potential to get back up to the 555s, and that's our next key zone of resistance. Okay, but if we see the SPY come up into that line in the sand and we fail to break above it and we see the short setting up, let's get short. Where to? We know we have some room down into this zone of support between 547.14 to 547.53. That would be PT number 1. And then if we are able to fall below that zone as well, then I would continue to look to get short until we get back into yesterday's low of day and then that lower zone of support that we have here on the SPY. So it really just comes down to that line in the sand level here on the SPY. And again, that's between 549.46 to 549.60. That's the make or break for me. I just want to see what the SPY does off that level here today and really just go from there. So the SPY, we got our long plan, our short plan off that line in the sand. QQQ, we also have our long plan and our short plan off that lits as well. Okay. Moving on to Tesla. I think Tesla could see some upside today. We do have that big daily gap overhead between 234.80 to 245.47. So normally we would just wait to see Tesla get up inside that gap, and then we would trade it for a gap fill long from 234.80 up to that 245.47. And that's one game plan. That's one option, is just simply sit back and wait to see if Tesla here today, tomorrow, into the week is able to break inside the gap, hold the lower part of support, and then come up and fill the gap. You can just literally wait for that. That's a-okay. But I think we could have a bit of a continuation play today into that gap level. So instead of me limiting myself to just 10 points, which, hey, 10 points is phenomenal, I see an opportunity to maybe get in down here, right, to be able to get 20 points out of this. Okay, so I want to ideally see a push and a hold above yesterday's high day and close here on Tesla. Like, ideally, I'd like to see us gap up today, but if we don't gap up today above yesterday's high day and close, at least see an intraday break and retest off that level and see a proper A+ break and retest with ideally multiple confluences. If we see that take place, I do think we can see a continuation push today off yesterday. I mean, yesterday was a pretty decent day. Nice gap up, nice push, Nice increase in volume, relatively strong close on high volume near high a day. I think that was a decent little push yesterday. And if we can get above yesterday's high day and close, I think we could see that second day of continuation. Where to? Bottom end of the gap, 234.80, right? But ideally, what would we be looking for? A break inside the gap, a hold above the bottom end of the gap, and then fill the gap. And that realistically, could play out over the next week or two. So if we can see that setup down here to get long, I would like to get long down here, take it up into a first target, bottom end of the gap, but then sit back with a runner and see, can we get inside the gap, hold the lower end, and then fill that daily gap at 245.47, right? So if we set up down here, I'm definitely looking to get in. But if we don't see anything setting up today and nothing's looking good, then we will just literally sit back and wait for Tesla to get inside that daily gap, if it even gets inside the daily gap in the first place. So that's going to be on Tesla. And then I was thinking about Goog, but I just don't think it's going to play on out. Yeah, not today, guys. Keep GOOG on the back burner list. I mean, you have this daily gap that you're coming down into between 144.74 and 147. And so the closer we get to that 147, the more opportunity we may have to see a nice little trade inside of that daily gap on Goog. But don't think it's going to happen today. I'm going to go ahead and remove that from the watch list. I do think Tesla has some really good potential for today above that 226.18 to 226.41 level. We'll see if we can get that break and that hold above that zone. And if so, play this long to a first target of 234.80. And then again, we are all set ready to rock here with the SPY and the Qs. Really just basing both of my trade plans today off of those line in the sands. Okay, and again, that lits on the SPY, 549.46 to 549.60. And then your line in the sand here on the Qs is between 457.78. So again, that's 457.78 to 458.42. You're on the Qs. And that's going to be the make or break today for that. All right, so what are you guys looking at now? What is on your watch list, ladies and gentlemen? Let's take a peek at it. Let's make sure that you guys are prepared for the day. But again, I'm just watching the SPY and the Qs. That's the norm. It's always the SPY and the Qs. With the occasional nice little swing trade or, again, just another individual stock looking pretty good. And today it's Tesla. Tesla looking pretty decent. We'll see what we have there. Bueller. You guys aren't looking at anything else? All right. Well, if we're not looking at any other stocks, that's okay. What kind of questions do we have? Do you guys have any other zones on the SPY and the Qs? Any other analysis you want to add to this? Any questions you have around, hey, Josh, I saw you're talking about this zone on the SPY and I just don't see it. It'd be anything like that. We got 8 minutes until the market opens, so let's use that time wisely.
GameStop had earnings last night. I posted that chart. I think it was in options.
They did?
They did. Right out of supply, right back into demand. Nice little pop, broke demand.
Dropping even lower now. Interesting.
To the moon, baby.
To the moon. I love that meme where the moon is to the downside and it's just a stock chart to the downside. To the moon.
That's my favorite to the moon picture ever.
Yes. I'm going to get that and put it on my wall and frame it.
Get a tattoo.
Hey Josh,
Get
Don
it tattooed
here.
on my chest? Yes. Don, good morning, buddy.
Good morning.
How
Josh,
you doing?
This might be I'm doing good, going through your courses, course material, videos, and this might be a stupid question, but could you tell me how, or tell us how you came up with to watch Tesla today and Google today, or at least to like how you narrowed down to those three?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And no such thing as a stupid question ever. So, basically, over the years, I have crafted a watch list of stocks that I've traded before that I like trading that meet certain parameters and criteria. So, I like trading options on stocks between like $50 at the lowest up to like $500. Number one, stocks that trade at least 1 million, 2 million shares a day on average. Stocks that move. And then stocks that at least move $1 to $2 per day on average. So when I did this years ago, I started doing this on FinViz, and I put in those parameters. And then it basically spit out all of these stocks that met those parameters. And then little by little, I'd look at this stock, see if I liked it, see if the movement was well. If I ever traded it, I've added it to a watch list. And then here I am today with a watch list of, how many stocks are here? Probably call it 100 different stocks that I've traded before that meet those parameters, and stocks that I like to keep an eye on. All right, so I just have a pre-built watch list, okay? And so every morning, what I do is I review and I scan that pre-built watch list very quickly. And where my focus is and where my head is, does something stand out to me at first glance? That's really what is going on in my mind. So when I start with like AMD, for example, and I look at AMD, does anything stand out to me at first glance? No. I move on to the next one. SoFi, do I really see anything that's standing out to me at first glance? Nope. Move on to the next one. Apple, no. Coin, no. Disney, no. So that's all I'm doing. As I'm on the
If I
daily
may,
time
I
frame.
think he's asking, what exactly are you looking for that says, okay, this is standing out to me versus not standing out to me through those lists?
Yep, getting ready to get to that on Tesla. So going through some of these, not standing out, right? Just going through them little by little. Nothing visually is standing out to me. But then I land on Tesla. I'm like, oh, there's a big gap to the upside. And we're pretty close to the gap, right? We're getting close. We're like 10 points away. And we know Tesla can move 10, 15, 20 points in a day. So I'm like, all right, we saw a nice pop yesterday, nice close, nice volume. We got that big daily gap to the upside. I'm wondering if we can fill that gap today. Does something stand out to me at first glance? Absolutely. Big daily gap. I like it. So then from there, I just continue to analyze it, right? And start to really just pick it apart, do my due diligence, really do all the analysis that I can do, and then start to build some plans for today. So that's where my head was with Tesla. Is like, all right, we got this big daily gap, and I can just wait for it to get inside the gap and then set up to fill the gap. That's like one option. That's one plan. Just wait for it to get inside the gap and fill the gap. But then I noticed yesterday was a pretty decent day. We had a gap up. We had a nice push, strong close near high a day, close above the 50 SMA with an increase in volume. That stands out to me. And so now I'm thinking, could we have a second day of upside continuation? Could we see a continuation move off yesterday's action and see some momentum and follow through today that gets us into that daily gap? I'm thinking, yeah, that's pretty realistic based on what I see. So then I build a plan based on that. What would I need to see to get long down here to take it into the gap versus waiting for it to get inside the gap, right? But it all started from top of the watch list on the daily. Does anything stand out to me? No. Move on to the next stock. Move on to the next stock until I see something that stands out to me, like Tesla. I do all my analysis. I go into my lower time frames. I build my plans. And then I ask myself, does this belong on my watch list today? Right? I got all these plans built, right? And I have an idea of what I would like to see take place. Is this still watch list worthy? Right? I think Tesla is watch list worthy for today. Google was another one we were just discussing. I see it on the daily. We got a gap to the downside, right? I'm doing all my TA, all of my analysis, going to my 5-minute time frame. And I finalize with that question. Is Goog watch list worthy today? I say no. Why is that? Right? Well, because we're pushing off this zone to the upside. I would want to see it below this zone coming into the gap because I want to trade this for a gap, right? But that's not happening. I think it's unrealistic that we see that take place today. So between Google and Tesla, which one realistically has higher probabilities of doing something for me and allowing to see one of my plans valid? Probably Tesla over Google. Right? So Tesla's watch list worthy. It's on the watch list. I have all my key zones and my analysis done. And I'm built my plans. I'm ready to rock. Google has potential, but it's going to the bottom of the watch list because I think it's unrealistic for that gap to fill today. And if it's unrealistic and it probably won't happen, why look at it, right? At that point, it's just a distraction. Was that your question? Does that answer your question, man?
Yes, thank you. Yep.
Absolutely.
No, they're not, Tom. Really?
Yes, they are.
That's
What?
hilarious.
Doesn't mean they have to, but that's now out there that they may issue up to 20 million more shares. So
That's funny as crap.
yeah,
They
may-
are purposely suppressing that as hard as they can.
Well, no, they're taking advantage of it, trying to get as much back from it. I mean, it's smart for a company to do that when the price is moving up. I mean, it's
No,
not.
I mean, the CEO is definitely doing right by the company. That's not what I'm saying.
Yeah.
The CEO said last time this happens, I'm going to do right and I'm going to take advantage of it if it happens again. He is most certainly capitalizing on that.
Oh, for sure. But you got